were introduced to Rails. And well, today let's try to use it and really create a RESTful app together. Yesterday we were able to see a complete RESTful CRUD app created using scaffold, but let's do it without scaffold so we can see the flow of things. Cool? So let's say that I want to create an app that keeps track of doctors and patients. Doctors and patients. So I'm going to come into my domain modeling, or I'm going to just draw it somewhere. So we got doctors, doctors and patients, okay? And let's say eventually I want them to be able to, them to be able to keep track of appointments for each other, right? Yes, let's say we want that eventually. Okay, we want that eventually, but for the time being, let's just set up the CRUD for each individual doctor and each individual patient. What are some things that we might care about for doctors? I mean, name for sure, but any others? Specialty? Okay. I think that's pretty good, right? These two? Okay, what about patients? Name? Illness? I think I'm gonna put that for appointments. Right? I want an appointment for this type of illness. But how about just the patient themselves? Insurance? Insurance. Let's make it a Boolean. Fine, let's make it a Boolean. And then condition? What's condition? Oh, illness? Oh, I think I'll put that in appointments. Yeah. Yeah, let's just put age. Sure. So we have pretty solid spread of data here. All right, nice. So here is one model, one resource, right, that we're concerned with, and here is another resource that we're concerned with. Okay, cool. Let's run with this for now. Let's set up one for doctor. Let's create a full CRUD for doctors without scaffolding. Okay. So how do we start? Well, first of all, I don't even have a Rails app, so I'm going to make one. Rails, new, what should we call this? Doctor app? Sure. All right. Okay, so Rails new created all this stuff for us. I'm going to go into it, and let's see what else is in here now. Okay. Okay, cool. Where should we start? What do you think? We all say model? Cool. Yeah, because we have to set up the databases eventually, right? And the Rails generator for models will create the model file and the migration file for us. So we can do that. So Rails G model, let's start with doctor. Doctor. Okay, now you may have seen some stuff here. So the Rails generator can take in additional, I guess you could say, arguments or options to help make things a little faster. Me personally, I don't really use them that much, but I just want to show them to you so you know they exist. So for example, if let's say, hey, for the doctor class, I know that I want a name attribute and a specialty attribute, and both of these are probably strings. Yes? So I can say, hey, doctor is going to have a name and type a string, and also specialty. Did I spell that right? Specialty. There's also a string. Okay? And actually, by default, if you specify options, by default it's gonna be string. So even if you don't say string, it's gonna be a string. But what if I want an integer? Well, probably you want something like this. Okay?
So if you do that, will that create it in your migration file when you?
Yeah, let's see. So I'm gonna run this, and then it'll create the files for us. It's gonna create the model file as well as the migration file, and some tests in case I want to write tests for this model. So let's go into the app and models. So super empty. That's because active record. Well, that's because active record is going to be the one giving us all the methods that talks to the database, right? Okay, so Doctor seems to be set up. Let's look at the migration. Nice. So you notice it already has a migration with some stuff filled out for us. Right? And you notice name is a string and specialty is also a string, despite me not saying anything for specialty because it defaults to string. Okay? But again, me personally, I don't really use this, but it's there. Saves you like a little bit of time. Cool. So here's Doctor. We set up the basically the migration. Let's migrate it. How do we migrate in Rails again? Yeah, Rails DB migrate. Same thing as rake. It's probably just using rake under hood. All right, cool. Great. We have this schema. So at this point, what I like to do is I just always want to make sure things are set up correctly. So let's go into the Rails console and see if our Doctor model is really set up. So if I do doctor.all, right, this is coming from Active Record. It's going to query using SQL to see if we have any doctors in our database, and right now we don't have any. Okay, let's see if we can create one. So let's say doctor.create, and this is just to confirm that our models is set up, same thing as mod1. Name, looks like a doctor sounding name. Chuck Tinkle? Can you help me spell it? T-I-N-G-L-E. Is that really? All right. I'm afraid. Extra credit. Special. I will Google it. I will Google it at home. All right. All right. This is all in recording. Did I spell that right?
Close enough.
Is that good? All right. Please, people listening to recording, I have no idea what any of this is. I'm just doing what I'm told. All right. Let's continue. Okay, let's see if this works. So doctor dot all. Cool. Seems to be working. Awesome. But if I were to run our app, let me just open a new terminal here. So Rails, how do I serve? Yes. Oh, what? Oh, I am not in the right project. So let's go into the Doctor app and Rails serve. There we go. Listening on port 3000. So localhost 3000. Okay, yay, we're on Rails. But okay, in terms of RESTful like routing, where would I usually go to see a list of all the doctors? /doctors. Okay, what's this error telling me? No route. By the way, I don't know if you know, these error pages are pretty helpful. So you can actually see all the routes you have available to you right now. I know we ourselves didn't create these, but I think Rails version 5, there's this new thing called active storage. I don't know if it's new, but active storage, it allows us to do file uploads. It'd be great, I think, if you could look that up for your projects. But yeah, so these routes, even though we didn't create them, they would just come with us by default from Rails. Yeah. How would I change the default page? That's a great question. I would have to do that in the routes page. Let's see here. Well, we're gonna go to the routes anyway, right? So I'll go there and then maybe we can see if we can change it. But yeah, we don't have a route for doctors, so we gotta make them. And also, I want to show you that in the error page, if you go to like a wrong route, you'll see all the routes you have available to you. And also, another thing you should be checking very often is, let me open another terminal here. You can always see all the routes you have available to you by doing Rails routes. Okay, these are all the routes that, oh geez, okay, cd doctor. These are all the routes that we have available to us in our application. So Rails routes. Okay, and I know it's kind of hard to read, but you can see, hey, there's a get request to this route, get request to these route, but we don't have any routes for a doctor, correct? All right, so let's see here. I'm gonna go into our, where can I go to configure the routes? Do you remember? So config routes. Nice. Nice. And to change the home page, I think, whoops, I think it's root. I have to look it up. I don't remember. But you know what? Let's look it up together. So Rails routes. See, I think to change the home page using root. So yeah, see. So based on context clues from everything we know so far. Oh great, where to go? What do you think is the syntax for this, or even this? Like, what do you think this is doing?
The root page to the method name.
So remember, the routes is now the connecting point to go to a controller, right? So this is saying, hey, the root page are just the base localhost 3000. Can you see in the back? I see you squinting. Yeah. Okay. The page in the back is gonna go to the pages controller main, right? For us, we don't have a pages controller, but this is how you can control what things do. Okay? So let's try to change that. So let's say root, and they're saying, hey, this is the shortcut for above, so I'm going to do that. So root should go to, I don't know, let's have it go to the doctor's controller, and let's just maybe make our own custom action and say home. Cool. This is not RESTful, by the way, but most apps aren't completely RESTful. RESTful is just a good convention to help us set up some nice code. Right, but it says this is shortcut for the above. Cool. Yeah, Ken?
We can find a method inside
We do. So what do you anticipate will happen if I go to the home page now? Hey, uninitialized constant, doctor's controller. All right, let's make a doctor's controller. How will we do that? Rails, G, controller, and let's, huh?
I'll just go to file and then,
Oh, you would just make it?
Yeah.
You could do that. You could do that. Yeah, whatever floats your boat. Okay. So Rails G controller doctors, and it's S because everything else, everything besides the model is plural usually. Okay. Okay, it created a bunch of stuff for us. Mainly the thing we care about is the doctor's controller, and it also created just the doctor's folder in our view. Okay, hope you see that, and then also create some tests in case we want to write tests in the future, and some JavaScript, CSS, in case we want to write JavaScript, CSS for our doctors. Okay, let's continue. So now that I have the controller, does this go away? No. How do I fix this now? I have to actually define the action. And what is action actually in the controller? Yep, the action is just really just a method for the controllers. So let's go into our app, controllers, doctor's controller, and let's make the method. And the method name should be home right now. Whoops. Yeah, Megan?
That shortcut to the root method, is you can do that with every route, or you have to do two?
No, this is just specifically for the root, using root. You can specify what the home directory will be. Yeah, so, okay, maybe we can make a welcome page as well. And again, this is not going to follow RESTful convention, but it's fine. It's good practice. So how do we get it to render something? And it's implicit. It will implicitly try to render, but you can do what you want. But for me, I'm going to be explicit. So I'm going to say, hey, let's render an ERB file. And I think I'm just going to call it homepage. Cool? So doctors, so new file, home.html.erb. All right, so let's just do this. Welcome to Doctor app. Leave it home. Hey, welcome to the Doctor app. There we go. Welcome to Doctor app or the Doctor app. Okay, all right. Awesome. But yeah, so that was, I guess, a good warm up. Now let's start trying to create some restful actions for our Doctor. So can we still do this? Doctors. Nope, still don't have the route. Let's make the route. So yesterday I showed you that you can make the route just like this. For example, if I want to get requests to /doctors, that goes to that goes to the doctor's controller. Can't type. Doctor's controller index. Now let's check that out. I added that to my Rails. I added that to my routes file, and if I check it out, see. So not only do I have root, we also have get doctors. See that? Cool. All right, but as some of you have seen in the labs already, there's actually a shortcut for this. We can do resources, doctors. Cool? Because RESTful convention is basically following similar pattern, right? I'm always going to have an index, I'm always going to have a show page, edit, new, update, delete, right? So this is just a shortcut that allows us to create all 7 of the routes in one go, okay? Boom. See that? Now we have all of the RESTful routes already created for us. All of them, yep. So we have doctor index, right? Doctor create, doctor new, edit, show, update. And notice we have 2 for update because they created one for put and patch. Okay. What is this? Oh, that's just the update. We got delete, which actually routes to the destroy action. Okay? But for me personally, I don't like creating routes, and actually, it shouldn't just be me personally, but I don't like creating routes that aren't being used. Okay, so I'll still create them one at a time, and how you can specify that is you can say this is basically just a method, right? So this is a method that takes in 2 arguments, right? What resource are you creating, and what options do you want to give it? Okay. But in Rails, you can just make things syntactic sugar. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to create resources for doctors, and I only want the routes right now for the index. Okay. All right. So let's see what that does. I'm going to go into Rails routes. And now you see we only have the route for the index. Okay. I think what is accepted into this array has to be RESTful names. So I think if I do like something that's not RESTful, I don't think it's going to work. But let's see. I've been wrong before. Yeah, so even though I have poop in here, it didn't create anything actually. See that? So the words in here have to be RESTful. The action has to be RESTful. And if you ever forget what the RESTful actions are, you can always just look them up, Restiler. And I'm pretty sure that even Rails routes will have these. So let's say only. So yeah, here are the RESTful verbs or actions. Okay. All right. So Restiler as well. Where is it? Index, new. Okay, maybe it's not all of them. All right, cool. Let's continue. So great. What do we want our /doctors to go to? Index. And this is, how can I correct this? Yep, perfect. Let's see. So we have a home. Great. Let's make an index. So define index and okay. And I know that eventually I want to show all the doctors that I have in my database. So let's render the index for doctors. Index. And we don't have that view yet, so let's create it. Doctors, new file, index.html.erb. And cool, does this work? Nice, blank page. But we know that we want to render a list of all the doctors. So let's use our controller to find all of the doctors. Doctors equals doctor.all. Right? So now I have all of the doctors saved into my doctors instance variable. So now, because I have it in an instance variable, I can have access to it inside my index page. So let's go into the index page, and I'm just gonna say h1 all doctors. And what do we want? Let's say I have a UL, and I want to render a list of all the doctor names inside this UL. How do I do that? Angry squid?
No, ice cream cone.
Ice cream cone. So at doctors dot each do, as I iterate through each doctor, I'm going to do what? Right, so as I iterate through each doctor, I'm going to print out an li. And inside the li, I'm going to just print the doctor name for now. Cool? Okay, so let's do that. Bam, bam, doctor.name. See if that works. Nice, we got Chuck Tingle. Very nice. Awesome. Let's see. So that's basically our index page. Let's continue. Let's continue some more. Let's say that, hey, I want a link to the show page. How would I change this from just a regular, I don't know, text.sc to a link? Help me out. Okay, so the HTML answer is we make a anchor tag, correct? Anchor tag, and that should make a link, but right now it's not linking anywhere. So let's put the link in here. What is the RESTful routes for a show page? Slash doctors slash the ID, right, which we can interpolate. And then d.id. Yes? All right. See if this works. And also, please get used to inspecting and seeing what our actual HTML is. Please. All right? So eventually, and this is very important for you to know, right? Eventually, what actually makes this link work is an A tag. Okay? The A tag makes this happen. All right, well, we have to continue making the routes and everything. But I'm going to pause here for a second before we continue to the show page. I'm going to pause. All right, because in Rails gives us these nice, handy helper functions for helper methods for the view page. Okay, so we don't have to. All right, so this syntax, I mean, it's nice. If you understand HTML, you'll know what this is doing. If you understand HTML and you understand ERB, like embedded Ruby, you'll know what that does. But it's still kind of hard to read. Agree or disagree? So Rails actually gives us helper methods to make this a little easier. And the one that I'm referring to specifically, I think I heard someone say it earlier, it's the link to tag. Okay, but link to is still a Ruby method, so I still have to do embedded Ruby. So I'm going to do embedded Ruby here, and I'm going to say link to. All right, link to is just a method, so it takes in arguments. And if you forget what these do, there are, by the way, we're taking a pause here. There are a bunch of helper methods. I don't expect you to remember how to use all of them. So if you ever forget, just look up link to Rails. And just get used to getting information from the documentation. We're going to have to do that more and more as we move forward, okay? But yeah, let's check out the documentation for link to tag, and whenever this decides to load. Sweet, all right. Link to. They even give you some examples. So let's check it out. For example, link to body and then the URL. So if you were to use context clues, what do you think body is? Yep, so the anchor tag has two parts, right? It's where does the anchor tag take me to, and what does the text look like? So the body is what the text is going to look like. And the URL, what do you think URL is? Yeah, where it goes when I click it. Okay, so for us, what do we want the link to tag to look like? Yeah, the name. I want the link to show me the doctor's name, but where do I actually want it to take me? I heard doctor's path, but really I can just do this, right? I want it to take me here. I want it to take me to /doctors / the ID, right? Agree? Disagree? How are we feeling about this? Okay. Let's see if this works first, and then we will make this even more simpler. So I'm going to get rid of this anchor tag because now I'm using the link to. And let's come back into our app and let's refresh. And this is why I say that you have to get used to looking at what the actual HTML looks like, because yeah, sure, I wrote link to over here, but what it actually created for me is the anchor tag, okay? And this is important. I mean, if this is wrong, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter if I use a link to or not. So if I do, right, it's not going to work. Okay, you have to always check just to make sure it's doing what you expect it to do. All right, so okay, so that's the first thing that I want you to know, take away from this pause that we're taking. Right? Here's the second thing I want you to take away. URLs can also become very complicated and annoying, and Rails also helps us manage these as well. I'm going to show you. If I do Rails routes, we can see all the routes. Dang, it's kind of hard to see here, huh? Sorry, let me do this in the actual terminal. CD C08 there we go. Okay, let me make this a little bigger so everybody can see. All right, so I do Rails routes, and here Rails routes. Hopefully it'll give me a better view. Ugh. All right. Sorry, I just want you to see the routes clearly so that I can show you. Let me go to a route that doesn't exist. Okay, and then I have a list of all the URLs here, right? Okay. So these are the paths that my app currently has access to, right? Just regular / and then /doctors. Okay, I want you to notice here, what does it say here? Doctor's path. See that? Okay, so this actually, when we created the routes using this resource, what it's going to do is it's going to create a helper method for us. It created a helper method for us such that when we say doctor's path, it's just a method that returns this URL. Make sense? So doctor's path will return a string of this URL. Okay? I'll say that one more time. Doctor's path will return a string for this URL. Okay? So back into my index, instead of just typing this out, oh wait, this is not going to work. So instead of typing this out, I could just say, okay, you know what? I did this in the wrong order. But So doctor's path will go to slash doctors, right? Okay, so since I know that we're gonna have to make a route for the show page anyway, let's do that right now. So then I can show you what's the difference. So I'm gonna add show. This is another action, right? And let me just refresh this. So great, now we have another path. See that? Slash doctor slash ID. And you notice we have another helper. Okay, they look almost the same, but what's the difference? Doctor's path, right, plural, will go to slash doctors, and doctor path, singular, will lead us to this URL, okay? So that means in my index, instead of typing this whole thing out, I could just say doctor, right, singular, path, okay? Well, which doctor are we trying to link this to? The D. I want to link to this doctor, okay? Really what this takes, what this method, what argument this method takes in is the ID. So if I put doctor path 1, it's going to go to slash doctors slash 1. If I put 100, it's going to go to slash doctors slash 100. But it's also smart enough to figure out that if I pass in an instance of a doctor, it will just grab the ID from the instance of the doctor. Okay? How do we feel about that? All right. So it's actually not that bad, but I remember when I was learning Rails, I got tripped up by this, but I think that's just because I wasn't paying attention very much. Yeah, Tom?
Is there any difference between putting G or D.ID?
No difference. If I put d.id, it's going to do the same thing. But doctor path is going to do that for me anyway, so I'm just going to pass in the doctor instance so as not to confuse myself. How are we feeling about this? Is that a question or? Yeah, what's up?
There's like, I think presuming there's still being used in the file, like reduce the amount of material underwriting at one.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a resource you can look for that sort of stuff?
Yeah, the docs, the documentation. Well, the ones that I show you in lecture are probably going to be the ones that you use the most.
Okay.
Okay? So link to you're going to use pretty frequently because it's a handy thing to help you create anchor tags, right? There are a bunch of them. So you can see button to, mail to, okay, probably not going to use that. So there are a bunch of them, okay? Later on in this mod, we're going to work with like drop downs, stuff like that. Actually, that's going to be tomorrow. So there, I'll show you how to create a drop down in HTML. You have to understand that, right? You have to know the basic HTML you're trying to create before you use the helpers, understand? So there are a bunch of ways to do this, but you have to know at the end of the day what you're trying to create is really just the anchor tag. All right, so I don't know how I can stress that. I can't stress this enough. You have to understand the HTML you're trying to create before you use these. All right, cool. Because otherwise you won't know how to debug, right? Let's see if the link to actually really worked for us. So let me go back to actual Dockers. All right, what should this anchor tag look like if I inspect it? At the very least, the href. Where should the href go? Slash doctor slash whatever the ID is. Okay, so this is very important. If you don't know how to read the HTML, it's like, how do you know if you're using link to right? Cool? And that goes for all the helpers. That goes for all the view helpers, right? You have to know the HTML you're trying to create. All right, cool. So you can actually shorten this even more, okay? But it's okay if you don't memorize all the shortcuts, right? If you understand the basic foundation, which is, hey, I need to create an anchor tag that goes to the show page. That's the most important thing, okay? And all of these things are just sugar on top or cherry on top. Cool. So actually, link to is smart enough to know that if you give it the instance of a doctor, it will just link to that doctor. You don't even have to pass in the URL. It will know what URL you mean when you give it the instance of the doctor. So actually, let me make this a little more readable. All right. How do we feel about what I just said?
What's it based on off
What is it basing off of? Well, because it's RESTful, this is a Doctor instance, correct? So Doctor instance, the class name is going to be Doctor, so it's going to build the URL, I think, off of those.
of? Which is basically off whatever the name of the class is.
Yep, it's based off of what the name of the class is. So our class name is Doctor, so it's going to link to /doctor/ the show page for the Doctor. All right. But if you don't remember this, it's fine. You can either A, keep using the anchor tag, B, do doctor path, and then pass in the doctor, which I prefer this way. Or C, if you feel really comfortable, just do this. And this is the shortest way. Yeah, Chris?
Is there a link to JavaScript?
No, that's JavaScript. So
Yeah. Is there like what do you JavaScript? Or is there
Well-
something else that
we'll talk about JavaScript when we get to JavaScript.
No, I'm wondering like if JavaScript uses A.
Well, JavaScript is a whole separate thing, right? If you want to add JavaScript on top of your Ruby file, that's separate. Yeah. So I mean, good question, but yeah, it depends. It really depends. If you're adding JavaScript to your Rails project, maybe you're still using link to create the A tag, right? Because the important thing that you need to take away is what you're creating is still an anchor tag. Okay? That's the important thing you need to take away from this, right? Okay. All right, that was a long pause. So one more time, the first thing is link to, and then the second thing is the URL helpers, okay? Those are the two things you have to, those are the two important takeaways from this, okay? The link to, which basically view helpers, and also the URL helpers, okay? The URL helper methods. The route helper methods. All right, cool. Let's move on. We created a link tag that will link to the show page. Okay, let's get back into our groove. How do I fix this? Go ahead, bless you. How do I fix this? Yep, we don't have action yet. So let's come into here. I'm going to say define def show. And for show page, we want to show information about one particular doctor, usually, correct? So before we can do that, what do we have to do? Yeah, we got to find the doctor that we're trying to show, right? So let's find the doctor. And in terms of URL, we know that we can grab the ID off of the URL. So let's do that. So @doctor equals doctor.find and params ID. Okay? Very nice. And implicitly, it will render the show page. I'll just be explicit so we can see it on the screen. Right, render show. Let's see if this works. Refresh. Boom. We don't have a template for show page. Let's come into our views. Doctors, new show.html.urd. Awesome. So let's say doctor bio. And then we'll say, let's make a p tag. How can I show the doctor's name? At doctor.name, and what else do we want to show? Maybe specialty. Thank you, that helps. Refresh. Nice. Chuck Tingle. Gyno. Excellent. You know what? I don't think these needs to be two p tags. I can just probably do this. All right. How are you feeling? So far so good? Excellent. Yeah, Jeff?
Just curious if there's, how you can just use resources, Docker, is there also in the controller, that's like a catch-all method that does all of the rest of the routes as well?
I think there's a gem out there that helps you do that. I would say for now, really just practice the flow. Yeah, there's a gem out there for that, I'm pretty sure. If you're using RESTful routes. All right, great. Show page seems to be working. Let's add a way to maybe delete a doctor and edit a doctor. Cool? All right, so remember in Sinatra, okay, so remember in Sinatra, how I would do that is I would have to, how would I go to a page to, going about this all wrong. Okay, so in Sinatra, how would I make a request to delete something? I would create a form because ultimately what I need to do is I need to send a delete request to a certain URL that will handle that delete request. Yes? Okay. So you can still do that. It'll still work. We don't have to do create first. We can go whichever we want. We'll do create after we do delete. Is that okay? That's true. Yeah, but I don't want you to pattern match, you know? Let's just do the delete first. So basically, we just need a way to send a delete request, okay? And we know we can do that using a form. But let me show you. Now I think we can do that much easier. For example, let's see here. Where are the helpers? All right, so I'll introduce you to another one that's pretty handy. And this is the pt1. All right, what do you think a pt2 does? Yeah, it makes a button that goes somewhere. Thanks. I don't know why it's loading. Let's give it a second. Great. All right, that's fine. I'll just do it for now. But since pt2 is a Rails method, what do I have to do? Yep, I have to interpolate it. I don't know what extension I have, but it's pretty helpful. All right. pt2 and nice. Name and then option. How do I use this? pt2, interesting. Not sure if I want to use this. Not sure if I want to use this. Sorry. Give me a second. Generates a form containing a single button that submits to the URL created by the set of options. Okay. So let's see here. What options do we do? Method. And how do I decide which one though? pt2 new, pt2 create. What about pt2 delete? Okay, here we go. All right, so pt2, this is what it looks like. And here in the second option, in the second argument for options is where we can specify what this pt2 does. So based on this documentation, what we can do is we can do this. Yes? All right. Let me show you. So pt2, let's say delete doctor. All right, so that's not going to do anything right now because I didn't give it any options. Okay, let's see. So delete doctors. Let's see what the HTML does, okay? All right, so notice, what did pt2 actually create for me? Yeah, and it's pretty smart. It figured out a bunch of stuff for me. Okay. So pt2 actually created a form, right? Because I'm saying, hey, this button should go somewhere. But it created a lot of stuff for me. Okay. This button, I don't think is going anywhere. No. No route matches post doctor. Okay. So we can specify the what we wanted to do. We can specify what we wanted to do by passing in some options. So instead of a post, I want the method to be a what? Delete. Okay, so let's see what that does. I'm going to come back here. Let's inspect it. Let's see the difference. So now, notice, didn't work. Sorry, I'll have to look this up some more. I'm going to go back to link 2 for now. Is that okay? Go back to link 2, okay? So link 2, delete doctor, and do we remember what the link 2 takes in for arguments. So the first one is how it looks, and second one is the URL. And in terms of deleting a doctor, what URL do we want to give it? /doctor / the ID of the doctor we're trying to delete, right? And how can we use our URL helpers to help us do that?
Doctor.
Doctor path, and where are we going to get a doctor from?
And
This is the show page, right? And we got the doctor instance right here. So we can pass the doctor that we're trying to set this URL to, okay? Let's come back here. But right now, this link to is not going to be a delete request. It's still a get request, so it's just going to take me right back to the show page, okay? But what you can do is method delete. At least I think you can do that. Could be wrong. All right. Okay. See that? So we sent a delete request to the doctor, right? So Rails can simplify things for us in terms of sending requests, because the alternative would be to create a form. Right? We will have to create a form. We will have to do the method override to send a delete request. Okay? And I'm pretty sure you could use button to. It's just I forgot how to off the top of my head, and I don't want to sit here in front of you, behind this podium, looking it up. So when I find out, I'll stack it to you all. Okay? But here's another way. How do you feel about this? All right. So let's continue the flow of things. How do I get this to actually delete? Yeah, first of all, we don't have the route, yes? So let's come into here, the routes. Okay, so I think the action is actually destroyed. I don't know why it's not consistent, but there we go. Okay, so now we have a route for the delete, right? Now we have the delete path. Okay, cool. So how do we continue this? Right, so we still need that method in our controller. So let's define it. Define destroy. Okay, so what do I have to do? Yep, find the doctor that I'm trying to destroy. Doctor.find params ID, right? And then what do I do? At doctor.destroy. All right, sounds violent.
Can you just, you don't have to make it, right? Go back,
Uh,
and then not find and not destroy.
yep, you can do that. Yep. You can do that. Great. So we destroyed the doctor. So let's see if what's his name again? Forgot. Dr. Tingle. All right. All right. Chuck Tingle has been fired. No longer here. Great. Seems to be working. Let's continue the flow of things. And the next thing that I want to show you is the create. Okay. Well, first of all,
I would go to, after this one.
what do you mean?
I would automatically go back to.
Oh, it didn't. I changed the URL.
Oh,
Yeah, but I guess what we want to do maybe is redirect. So redirect. And I don't remember the exact syntax, so I'm going to look it up. So Rails, redirect. It's redirect _2 versus in Sinatra, it's redirect space 2. Yeah. Cool. But let's say after we destroy Docker, we're going to redirect to, and this takes in the URL. So we could say, hey, let's redirect back to all the doctors, right? Or alternatively, what is the URL? What is the route helper that leads to here? It's doctor's path, right? Doctor's path. Okay, so alternatively, we can do that. Yeah, Jack?
Why is it, like, what's the difference between redirect to and render? Why wouldn't you just render the doctor's path after you destroy it instead of redirect?
Why wouldn't I render the index?
Yeah, like, what's the difference there?
Right, because then, so if I wanted to render, then I would have to find all the doctors in here, and then render the ERB. Versus I already have a route that does that, so why not just
Oh,
route
so
them
you're
back?
just pointing them to that actual action.
Yep, I'm routing them back to this index action.
Got it.
Yep. Okay, let's do create. What are the steps to creating a resource again? We have to create we have to create a route to what? To create. I mean, just in plain English, what are the steps? I mean, like, if I was a doctor and I wanted a profile on this website, what would I have to do? Yeah, so first you would show them a form, right? Hey, I want to create a doctor, so okay, here you go. Here's a form. Fill this form out, and then when they press submit, then the doctor actually gets created, right? So what do we have to do now first? Yeah, let's make a route to show them the form to create. Right? And you don't have to. You can put the form anywhere, but the point is we need to show them a form to create a doctor. Right? I could put the form in the index. I could, but let's continue the pattern that we've been doing. So cool. So let's add a route, and the action for that usually it's new, right? And after adding that, so if I do Rails routes, you will see that now we have a new route here. And also notice what else got created for us. New doctor. So yep. So we have doctor's path. We got a doctor path. And what do you think this will take us? To here, /doctor/new, yeah. Well, first of all, let's see if it works. Come back to our doctor app here, doctor/new. Boom. How do I fix this? All right, new method. So, define, new, and all right. And then by default, it will render the new template. Render new. All right, new file, new.html.erb. Nice. Whoops. And let's refresh here. Great, we have it. How are we feeling about everything so far? Okay. Oh, Cyrus? How come? Okay.
It's tough for
Think big picture? Got it. It's always the same flow. We need a route that matches to a controller that runs state view. Got it. All right, so the first pause that we took was about the link to, right, view helpers, as well as the URL helpers. We're about to take another pause, and yep, we're going to take another pause right now, okay? So in order to show a form, what would we usually do? Form. The action usually specifies what? Where we want to submit this form, correct? And usually, where do we want to submit a form? In terms of create, in terms of RESTful routing, where do we want to submit or post this form?
The value of the created document.
We're creating a doctor, right? We're creating a doctor. We don't have the doctor created yet.
Oh,
There's no ID. So, yeah. So this is important, right? We usually, the RESTful convention for posting this information should go to this URL right here, okay? /articles. Okay? So yeah, you got to understand the HTML before you can use the helpers. I'm about to use the helpers to create the forms, but I wanted you to see what the actual form looks like first. Okay, so form action, I wanted to go to /doctors, right? Or alternatively, I can use what here? Yep, exactly. So, or alternatively, I can say, hey, give us the doctor's path, right? But just for now, I'll just put this because it's easier to see. Doctors, and what method should this form, what type of request should this form be sending for creating a doctor? Post request, yes. Excellent. Okay, and then now in here is where I would put the input, right? Um, and why would I want to give this a name? Why would I want to give the input a name?
So I know what to put in the field.
Right. Whatever is in the name is going to end up as params in the body of this post request. Okay? And I could do like doctor name, right? And what is this syntax doing for us here? So now, once I press the submit button, I will have doctors as a hash in my param. And then inside that hash, I will have the doctor's name. And then since I probably also want specialty, probably do this as well, specialty. Cool? And probably a way to submit it. So button, button type, submit, and this will create doctor. Let's come back here. Boom. So this is basically the basic ingredients I need, right? Basic. How this, yes, this should be a review from Sinatra, right? This is how we would do it in Sinatra. We have to create our own form, right? Okay, now I want to show you the Rails helper methods to help you create forms. Okay, so this part can be confusing, but I think but it doesn't have to be. Okay, there's basically there's three ways for you to create forms in Rails. Right? Number one is like this. Just type the HTML, and honestly, you should know how to do this first. Okay, you always have to know the HTML first. Okay, that's the most important part. Especially that a form has action and method. Okay, those are the most important things about form. All right. So second way you can create forms in Rails is using a helper method in the view called form tag. Okay, form tag, and we can look that up. Let's say form tag Rails. I just want you to maybe memorize the name of these helper methods and just look them up. All right. So let's even see here. What do you think this URL for option for the first one is doing? Okay. So what's happening here? Yep. So this form tag will send the request to where? Based on in this documentation, where will this form tag send the request to? Yeah, it will send the request to /post. So this is why, again, I say you have to understand what it's doing, okay? All right, so I'm actually going to leave this here, but comment it out. Okay, actually, I just deleted it. So we want to do a form tag, okay? Well, in HTML, how you make comments is you do this. Let's just, I'll maybe put it back for your notes, okay? All right, form tag. Let's say I want this to go to where? This one should go to, I will create, this is a form for creating a new doctor, right? Doctor's path, okay? And let me come back into our app. Get used to using the inspector because it will help you understand this. All right, see, and you don't see the form because I don't have the input field in here, but look, we created a form with the action going to /doctors. Cool? And you can specify on top of that the method. Right? So now we don't have to worry about the whole method override stuff with the hidden input stuff. If we're using these helpers, it can help simplify the process of sending forms with different requests. Okay? All right. But hey, this form is supposed to have more stuff inside, right? This form is supposed to have more things inside it, like inputs and buttons to submit. And you can see here, according to the documentation, this is how I would put additional stuff in there. See that? So let's put another one. I'm going to say form tag do, and then have an end here. Okay. And what input field do we want? Well, we want a text field for what? For the doctor's name, right? Hello? Cool. All right, so the additional tags you can see on the side, there's a bunch of them, right? Label tags, but for the one that we're going to be using is probably text field tag. Okay, text field tag is short for the input field. Okay, so text field tag will actually result in the input field. All right. Okay, yeah, I'm just pausing here a lot because at the beginning, this seems like a lot, right? It's like you have to memorize, oh, input, and I have to memorize these helpers. But just keep in mind, these are helpers, okay? These are meant to help you. So you should know the HTML first. And then once you know the HTML, you can just Google, hey, how do I create input in Rails? How do I create form in Rails? And then you should get documentation for it, all right? Yes?
I'm a little confused.
Sure.
Oh, wait, no, back to the
Mm-hmm.
So, are we displaying form tag doctor's path? Is it in state?
Mm-hmm. We're displaying it, yep.
Or is that just?
Well, this will result in HTML code. Right? This method over here will result in HTML code that you can see on the page. Well, actually, you don't see it because there's nothing in a form, but this is only here because of the angry squid, right? If the angry squid was not here, then we will just evaluate this code, but never put anything here. Okay, so without the angry squid, there's no form, right? Because it evaluated the Ruby code but didn't put any HTML in it. Okay? So that's why angry squid. All right, cool. Let's create some input for here. So I want a text field tag inside this form helper. So text field tag. Okay, and let's look up the documentation. All right, so it seems like if I just put name, I'm going to get all of these filled out for me. See that? Name is name and ID is name. But what if I don't want that? Let's see. Name and value. Okay, so for us, we want probably a name for our doctors, correct? So let's come back into here, refresh. Great, we have one input field. Name and name. So far, so good? Okay, keep going. All right, I think if we want to nest, like how we did before, doctors bracket name, I think we actually have to specify that by giving it additional arguments. So I think we can say name is doctor and then name, right? If we want the name to be a little different. Let's see if that works. Oh, whoops, that's the value. Ooh, yikes. Okay, so let's look at here. Value should be nil. Okay, so the second argument is always going to be the value, so I'm going to leave that as nothing, and then maybe I'll put this third one as an option. You okay? All right, let's continue. There we go. Nope, the first one is what? The first one is, oh, you know what, you're right, it is just name. Sorry about that. Yes, you are right. So actually, this wasn't even necessary. My apologies. So yes, if we want to nest it just like before, it will just be doctor and then name. Okay? And maybe just wrap this in a, whoops. All right, but the point is I'm trying to create the input tag with this name, right? So that I can put all of the fields that we're collecting for doctor inside of that nested hash in the params. Cool? All right, so let's refresh. All right, doctor name. Okay, let's do another one for specialty. How do we do that? So same thing. Language grade, specialty. Okay, let's refresh. And we probably want to put some labels on here, but I just want to show you that the important part is to create the input tag, right? All right, and finally, let's put the submit tag. And I think in Rails, for this form tag, it's just submit tag. Okay? And then what we want to call the submit tag, we just create doctor. How is this so far? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or a thumbs down. It's okay if it's thumbs down as well. It seems like a lot at first because there's a whole bunch of new like methods. But once you learn the syntax, which is, hey, I want to create a form, and then inside the form, I want to create these things. Once you create a couple of them, it should sink in, okay? All right, so this is the second way. Right? What was the first way again of creating a form? Just writing the HTML, okay? And the second way is what? The helper method form tag, right? In case you need to know what to Google, right? Okay, I will show you the final way, all right? It's not one line, it's kind of like this way, just a little different, all right? And then your next question might be, well, what the heck, like why do one versus the other? And we'll talk about that. But let me just comment these out. I'm gonna comment these out by putting a hashtag after this. Okay, so now these are all commented out. All right, I'll leave this here so you have it for reference. Okay, I'll show you the final way of doing this, which is not a form tag, but form for. Okay, this is a form for tag, right? And probably you're gonna use this one the most. So if you forget this, I'm fine with that. Just know that it exists in the back of your mind, but you'll probably be using form for the most. So if you had to pick one to memorize, maybe pick this one. But I don't want you to memorize. But if you had to pick one to memorize, pick this one. All right, how does a form for work? I'm going to pull up the documentation for it so that we have access to it. So form for. Yes. Okay, here are the documentation. All right. So form for, I mean, it's just another helper method, correct? For form tag, it's a helper method that takes in what as an argument? Form tag took in what as an argument? It took in a string, right? Representing the URL. Yes? Okay, because it needs to know where to send the form to, okay? Well, let's see what form for takes in as an argument. Okay? So form for, this one doesn't really show it. Form for actually will take in the instance. Okay? I know here you see a symbol, but just take my word for it. It'll take in the instance of what you're trying to create. A form for. And what are we trying to create? We're trying to create a doctor. All right, so let's try it out. So form for, okay, but so now your question may be, okay, well, we need to give a doctor instance, so which doctor instance? Yeah, we haven't created this doctor yet, right? We're creating the form, we're giving the user the form to create a doctor. So the instance we can pass into form for is just doctor.new. We're trying to create a new doctor, all right? And, but actually, I don't want to do this here. I'm going to do it in the controller, all right? Which one of these actions renders the forms again? The new. So I'm going to say, hey, doctor is a brand new doctor. Right? Okay, so what's the difference between new and create? One saves it, okay? And what is the difference between an instance that's been instantiated but not saved, and what's the difference between an instance that is saved? Okay, so one has an ID. So we haven't created this doctor yet, right? What if the user decided halfway filling the form that, okay, actually I changed my mind and they need the website? We don't want to create a doctor before actually giving, right? I'm sorry? No, we're still showing the form. We haven't actually worked on the actual creation yet, okay? So yes, we're creating a new doctor, but we haven't actually created a doctor yet. We just want to start creating a doctor. All right, so here is the new instance of a doctor. And so I'll just pass in form for a new doctor. How are we feeling about this? Okay, so? All right. And I'll show you what that does. Let's inspect it. What's missing block? Okay, whoops. So okay, and here's the other difference between a form for and a form tag. And that is form for, we're actually taking a do. And we have to pass in a parameter saying how are we going to create this form for the doctor, okay? So that's the slight difference. This one, just takes in a block. This one will take in a block parameter for the form, okay? All right, so let's come back here. Nothing in here yet, right? Because I haven't filled out anything for the form, but let's see. And okay, so aside from class and ID, what do you notice that is sending to? Yep, it filled out the action for me. Hey, you gave me an empty instance of a doctor. You must be trying to create a doctor. So I'm going to fill out all the rest for you. Right? So that's what the form for does. Okay. All right, let's fill this out. Everything else is going to be about the same. For example, I want a text field for this form, right? So I would do f.text field. Okay. So a little bit different. I don't put text field tag. I just put text field. All right. And what is this text field supposed to fill out for the doctor? The name. So I'll put in name here. Oh, I probably need the Angular script. All right, and let's go check it out. All right, so what do you notice for the input? Okay, since this is a form for a doctor, it already nested the name for us. See that? Hey, you're creating a form for a doctor? All right, well, I'll nest the name inside doctor because you're trying to create a form for a doctor. Okay? So that's the nice thing about form for. All right, well, what about specialty? Same thing. Specialty. And then refresh. See that? Oh, okay. This must be the specialty for the doctor. Okay. And now finally, I'm just going to put one for submit. All right. F.submit. Actually, I'll just put F.submit. And because we're creating a form for a doctor, it actually knows, when you click this button, is to create doctor. Okay? All right, so why is there 3 ways of doing things? Right? Why is there 3 ways? Why can I do it this way, and then I have the default HTML way and this way? Okay, well, the most flexibility that you're going to have is if you hard code the form yourself. Right? If you hard code the HTML form yourself, you have the most flexibility there. Right? You have the most control. But then you'll be doing more work. All right? The form tag, I think, is kind of like an in-between. Right? This one just helps you create a form, but I don't know what this form is for. Right? This form, I have to specify a doctor and everything. I have to specify the URL. Okay? So this one is like a in-between. Right? Now, form for does the most work for you, as you can see. Right? Form for did all that work for you, but you also have the least amount of control for form for. Right? It did so much that you don't really have control over what it's doing. So when would you want to use these? Well, if you're trying to create a RESTful CRUD application, you're probably going to be using form for. Okay? How do we feel about what I just said? Pretty good? All right. Yeah, Megan? Okay, you bring up a good point. Edit. I'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, but I want to make sure we're at a good spot right now. We're at a decent spot. Okay. So this is the form for helper tag. This is one. This is one thing that I really want you to know. Okay. Yeah. Sebastian.
I was just gonna say, before we dive into that, do we want to take like a 5-minute bathroom break?
5-minute bathroom break. Let's do that. Let's take a break.